Have you ever passed a car accident on the side of the road? You probably didn't stop to help, but I bet you slowed to look. Why do we like horrible things? Why do we gravitate toward horror films, monstrous villains, and the great evils of history? And why are we pulled to all of these horrible things, not with a mindful utilitarian caution, but by some magnetic fascination, making a hostage of our attention, prying it toward the horrible? I've been thinking about horror lately, and not just as a genre, but as a reality of the world that we inhabit. And there's two questions that I want to answer today. One, why does horror capture our attention so fully? And two, why do so many of us seek it out, deliberately inviting fear into our lives? To answer these two questions, we first need to ask, what makes horror so horrible? Let's take a textbook case. Donald is scared of heights. For Donald, heights are horrible. Why? Well, we might say that Donald has a phobia, maybe some past trauma of falling or something deeply rooted inside his psychology, but that's boring to me. I want to know, why does height specifically provoke fear? Why is it tangled in his psychological makeup? Well, you might say that it's simply because Donald fears falling. And yeah, sure. But why? What's so bad about falling? Well, you might say that Donald fears falling to his death. And here most people would probably stop. Of course, they would say, of course Donald fears death. Who wouldn't? Now, I'm not saying that the fear of death doesn't exist, but I do want to ask, why? The Greek philosopher Epicurus over 2,000 years ago made a very interesting point. When we are alive, we are not dead by definition, and so why fear what isn't happening? And when we are dead, by definition, we are beyond the capacity to fear at all. And what he means is that it's illogical to fear death as a state of being because we won't be alive to experience it. The absence of being in death leaves no room to feel anything at all. And if that's true, then it's not the state of death that terrifies us. It must be something else. And that leaves only the process of dying, the transition, the act of dying rather than the state of being dead. But yet again, we ought to ask why. Why fear dying? Though this time I do think it's more obvious. Dying is the highest confrontation with the unknown. The confusion, the havoc, the madness of facing your own demise, the disintegration of your own being, the fall into the abyss, the swallowing of the deep. In a word, chaos. And that's where fear lives, in chaos, beyond the edge of what is knowable. When Donald fears heights, what he truly fears is the dissolution of stability. At the edge of a cliff, he is confronted with the fragility of control. One wrong step, one moment of imbalance, and he is swallowed by the abyss. The fear is not just of falling. It's not just of death. It's of losing agency, of succumbing to forces beyond himself, of being subsumed by the unknown. A fear of chaos. In this way, you could take any phobia, any fear at all, and when you get down to it, when you play the game of whys, as we've done here, I think all fear terminates in a fear of death first and then a fear of chaos after that. It's not the specific threat that terrifies us. Heights, snakes, spiders, water, these things are incidental triggers of something deeper. They are arbitrary instances of how each of us brushes up against chaos. And what we really fear is the way these things unravel the order that we depend on. In this way, fear might be defined by chaos. What fear is might be just to be in proximity to chaos, to feel the water rush above one's feet, and to know the anxiety of what it might be like to drown in the deep. In life, we construct and inhabit a happy order, enjoying safety, certainty, and meaning, and these structures allow us to navigate life confidently. We trust that the ground beneath our feet is solid, that time moves predictably forward, that the people we love and care about will still be there tomorrow. And these assumptions, they create a framework of order that let us act without constant anxiety. And chaos is existentially threatening because it is the collapse of that order. So we can give an answer to our preliminary question. Fear and horror are created and sustained by chaos. And I think we see this play out in the stories we tell each other all the time. Take Vader, for example. Vader's story, very popular, begins with Anakin Skywalker, a former slave, now a Jedi, free and powerful, who tries so desperately to mold an ordered life, one that belongs to him. He envisions a future where he can shield his loved ones, Padme and their unborn children, from harm. But underlying this vision is a gnawing fear, the fear of losing them, the fear of falling back into slavery of one kind or another. And when he foresees Padme's death, it ignites his dread of chaos, the unpredictable, the uncontrollable forces that threaten to destroy his carefully built world. And this fear drives him to the dark side in a bid to regain control from these chaotic forces. Ironically, it's Anakin's very attempt to impose order by embracing the dark side that causes the collapse of everything he sought to protect. Padme dies, his unborn children are hidden from him, and he's left to grapple with the ruins of his own life. But how does Vader deal with this? How does he navigate being submerged in the deep, swallowed by a chaos of his own making? Well, Vader's fear manifests as an obsessive need to control. He becomes the ultimate symbol of fascism, imposing a cold and unforgiving order of the Empire over the galaxy. And yet this order is hollow, even false, born of his own inner chaos. The rigid discipline of the Empire is not some triumph over chaos, but it's clear to the viewer that it's an extension of Vader's fear projected onto the galaxy. Vader's transformation into a tyrant is just a reaction to the chaos within. He imposes an external order to mirror the control he lacks over his own fear and grief. And yet this order is brittle and oppressive, a facade barely concealing the chaos that it stems from. Fear then isn't just a biological response to danger. If you investigate it far enough, fear reveals itself as an existential reaction to chaos. Chaos breeds not merely physical dangers, but it threatens identity, selfhood, and ultimately the structures of meaning and reality itself. And that is what horror is. But why then are there so many of us, in no small number, who actively expose themselves to such horror, though in controlled doses? Why watch the horror film? Why play the bloody difficult game? Why jump out of the plane and feel the helplessness of falling that Donald feared so much? Why indulge the horrible? Well, let's think about order for a second. Yes, order is safe, certain, and secure. It's the state that we strive to organize our lives around. In many ways, it's the ultimate guiding ethos to living what philosophers have called for 1,000 years the good life. But as a matter of definition, order is only safe insofar as it is undisturbed. It is only certain insofar as it is not subject to pressure. Order is fundamentally at its highest the absence of change. And what does not change is frozen. And what is frozen is impotent to growth, stagnant, immune to development, incapable of learning. The paradox of order is that it promises safety by eliminating the possibility for change. And in that way, it's a perfect prison of our own making. Without chaos to disrupt it, order suffocates itself. Unconsciously or otherwise, we have long understood this intuitive relationship between order and chaos. Genesis captures this in the first 3 sentences. In the beginning, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And here Genesis mythologizes order and chaos. The faceless waters are chaos, the unknowable deep. And God sees the deep and he's confronted with chaos, dark and terrifying, but powerful. In it, he finds potential, something that, if harnessed, could be more. And through it, God creates, and he sees that it is good. In other words, chaos is the vehicle for creation and growth. Chaos is change, and if harnessed, the path to become more. It's like fire. You might get burned, but if you don't learn how to use it, you will die in the cold. It's raw energy. And that's why Prometheus is punished by Zeus for giving humanity fire. He entrusts us with potential, with the tools to grow. He exposes us to possibility itself, allowing humanity, through struggle and adversity, the chance to approach the power and wisdom of the gods. And in so doing, Prometheus undermines the monotonous order of Zeus, and he's punished accordingly. Chaos, like fire, is dangerous, but it's also the crucible of transformation. By confronting the horrible, we expose ourselves to the unknown, and through that confrontation, we dip our feet in the infinite well of potential. Insofar as you seek growth, insofar as you seek to be more than you are, so will you search, unconsciously or otherwise, for a concentrated but contained dose of the horrible, for a measured and productive encounter with chaos. And this is why we indulge the horrible, why we're drawn to horror films, to dark myths, stories of upheaval, not just to scare ourselves for entertainment, but to simulate an encounter with the abyss. And this is why stories, fiction, art, it's not just mere entertainment. Stories encode encounters with horror and encode experiences of navigating the tightrope between order and chaos. The totality of stories is a web of our collective consciousness, each story a node in an expanding network, ever pushing forward the evolution of human thought. Stories in this way are like neural pathways in a collective brain. Just as neurons fire and form connections to process information, stories act as the pathways of our collective identity. And through stories, humanity charts a map of what it is to be. And this is why stories feel so real, why they resonate with us on such a fundamental level, why we carry them with us as we go about our lives. They are not just representations of life. They are life. They are the raw experience of being, all at once frightening and beautiful, chaotic and transformative. Stories, then, are consciousness made tangible. They are the living reflection of being, the act of becoming encoded into narrative form. And this is why when we indulge the horrible, we're not just consuming fear. We're participating in the most fundamental aspect of existence, the unfolding of being itself. And that is why we like horrible things. This one got a little bit more philosophical and maybe a bit too discursive, but alas. And I know the irony has not escaped me. I mean, a video on horror without any analysis of traditional horror films, I know Vader and Genesis hardly count as horror. But I think those who have understood me will see that horror is more than jump scares. It's a confrontation with chaos, a mirror held up to the deepest fears and potential within us all. And in that way, I guess all good stories are of the horrible. But that said, I might do some more serious analysis on hardcore horror later. What I will do though is more philosophical stuff like this on the channel, but I am going to aim for more formulaic and syllogistic expressions of my ideas as I move forward. Until then, thank you for watching, my friends, and have a very good day.